of transforming the whole world into carbon copies of itself. Modern Western civilization has also given to the world one of the strangest revolutions mankind has ever witnessed. It's the modern feminist revolution. And tomorrow night, inshallah, we're going to attempt to respond to the modern feminist revolution. But the modern feminist revolution is already presiding over the destruction of the family unit. And as the family unit disintegrates, society falls apart. And it's anarchy. You won't be able to control those children. No, not even the police service will be able to control those children. They're going to come tomorrow. Finally, there's something very curious about modern Western civilization. I consider it to be the most important thing of all. What is it? It appears to be a civilization that is essentially godless. It appears to be a civilization that is committed to materialism. It is a civilization which is constantly attacking religion and the religious way of life. And as a consequence of that war on religion, religion is on a state of decline around the world today. Yet, the reality is that modern Western civilization has come into being as a consequence of a reconciliation, a curious reconciliation, a rapprochement between some Christians and some Jews. Oh, but I thought the Christians declared of the Jews that these are the ones responsible for crucifying the Lord Jesus. So they're guilty of the greatest crime of all, to kill God himself. And there was always Christian hostility towards Jews, all through history. And yet strangely, mysteriously, mystifyingly, in modern Western civilization, the world has witnessed for the first time and for the only time Jewish-Christian friendship and alliance. So this is not really a godless civilization. It appears to be a godless civilization, but it is at its heart a Judeo-Christian civilization. And the United States of America, you could have as many Muslims as you want there. It still remains a Judeo-Christian country. What do we make of this? If that was the end of the story, that is already strange enough, but there's more to come. Modern Western civilization has witnessed not only this Jewish-Christian reconciliation and alliance, but more than that. This is the civilization which has an obsession with the Holy Land. They may not say it, but they also believe that history is going to end with events which will unfold in the Holy Land, as the Christians do, as the Jewish do. Modern Western civilization has displayed its obsession with the Holy Land in many instances in history. How do we explain, for example, Britain, a secular state? 1917, and the British government issues the Balfour Declaration. What does it say? That the British government will work for the establishment of a Jewish national home in the Holy Land. Indeed, the whole of the First World War appears to have been contrived in order to achieve the liberation of the Holy Land, which the British Army did. It is modern Western civilization which presided over the return of the Jews to the Holy Land. Without the modern West, they could not have done it. It is modern Western civilization which created the state of Israel. The European people did it, not the Oriental Jews. When Britain acted as the midwife for the state of Israel to be born in 1948, I believe it was 11 minutes later that the United States recognized Israel. How do we explain this? Are these things happening by accident? Not only has there been this curious relationship between Britain and the United States, Britain and the Holy Land and Israel, which you cannot explain with normal tools of political analysis, but also with the United States and Israel. Which political scientist there is in the world today who can offer a rational explanation for the curious relationship that exists between the United States and Israel? And modern Western civilization has armed Israel. Transfer of technology, transfer of military technology, massive economic aid, massive financial aid, to the extent that Israel is now a superpower. And to the extent that Israel is now poised to take over from the United States as the ruling state in the world. How do we explain this? What is modern Western civilization? What is its conception of the movement of history? What is its conception of the end of history? Their philosophy of history, and incidentally, the reason why German scholar Friedrich Hegel. And Hegel spoke for modern Western civilization when he said that the historical process moves in such a way that there is a continuous conflict between thesis and antithesis. He called it thesis and antithesis, we call it truth and falsehood. But the conflict between thesis and antithesis always resolves itself, he says, in a synthesis which lies at a higher stage of the historical process. So when the synthesis emerge, the thesis and the antithesis now become redundant. And so history is not moving in a linear direction, regressive, going down. No. History is moving in a linear direction, progressive, going up. The latest is always the best. And so when modern Western civilization achieved its dominance over the whole world, it represented the synthesis of all civilizations which came before it. This is the best. And so religion has had its day, and religion's day has now ended. And so religion, including Islam, now belong to the museums of history. They are now moribund. This is Friedrich Hegel. Arnold Toynbee came much later, and Arnold Toynbee, as an ardent Christian, attempted to grapple. And he had to recognize, and he had to follow in Hegel's footsteps, at least in this respect, of recognizing the claim of modern Western civilization to be the best that has ever emerged in history. And therefore all previous civilizations now belong to the museums of history. What will be the end of history? Francis Fukuyama, about 10, 15 years ago, wrote that book, The End of History. And in that book he argued that not only does modern Western civilization represent the synthesis of all civilizations that came before it, and therefore the highest and the best. But he also argued that this is the last. That history ends with the triumph of modern Western civilization over all the rest of the world. Fukuyama did not understand the internal reality of the subject. And that's why he came to this conclusion. No, this is not true. Modern Western civilization has an unwritten conception of the end of history, which is connected with the Holy Land. There is an actor at work in modern Western civilization which is constantly using modern Western civilization to achieve his objective. I recognize that actor to be the false Messiah, Dajjal. He is the creator of this amazing and unique phenomenon in history. He is the explanation. And history will not end until Western civilization allows that state of Israel to replace the United States of America as the ruling state in the world. And a Messiah emerges in the Holy Land and claims to be the true Messiah and brings back the golden age. From our perspective, he would not be the true Messiah. He would be the false Messiah. He would be Dajjal. But Western civilization was not only created by the false Messiah Dajjal, not only is it ruled by the false Messiah Dajjal, who is the mastermind, but more than that. Gog and Magog are the two dominant actors acting within modern Western civilization.